Karthikeyan Ayya, you may take over.
Sure, yeah. வாழ்க வையகம் வாழ்க வையகம் வாழ்க வளமுடன் குரு வாழ்க குருவே துணை. Good morning, everyone. We are going to discuss about analysis of thoughts as part of introspection 1. Let me share my screen. Ayya Prabhu, can you give me co-host so that I can share?
Yes, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
வாழ்க வளமுடன். So, as part of introspection 1, we are going to see analysis of thoughts. Let us all get the blessings from our beloved Guru, Sri Yogiraj Vedatri Maharishi, to help us throughout this session to get clarity and elevate ourselves to a new level of understanding on this specific topic. Be blessed by the divine. First, before we start an analysis, we need to understand what is thought. Thoughts are born of the unique functioning of the mind. Okay. So from this sentence, we have introduced to a new word called mind. So what is mind and what is thought? And by reading this sentence, thoughts are born of the unique functioning of the mind, which means thoughts are within the mind, or a bundle of thoughts is called mind. Mind is a perceptual discovery process of the consciousness. So mind is a combination of 10 different steps of consciousness in the process of understanding, and that combined 10 steps of our mind, our consciousness, is called mind. And that mind is a biomagnetic wave which resonates outside the world, to get the perceptions and create its own understanding. And when that spreading happens within ourselves, based on a specific intensity, it just pops up. That pops up process in the mind, in the biomagnetic wave cluster, that pop-up is called thoughts. So we get some understanding about thoughts and mind. So thoughts are born, which pops up from the plane of biomagnetism, which is called mind. And it just continuously pops up based on the different motions in the consciousness, the surroundings, and the need. So there are different reasons why we have these thoughts pops up, and we will discuss all those in this session. So we get some understanding about what is mind and what is thought. So mind is a perceptual discovery extension, which is called biomagnetic spread of consciousness. And the intensified points in that plane of biomagnetism is called thoughts. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay. Life force, rotation, magnetic waves work through the sense organs, perceptions, reckoning, imprints in the life force, energy particles. So it is a cycle. So we discussed that mind is a biomagnetic wave. Now we need to understand how this wave is happening. If we take ocean, the waves are continuously coming, but it starts from the center portion of the plane of ocean where there is a pressure difference, and that pressure difference is what creating the wave. The wave is nothing but the movement of water. The same way, when the absolute space is defined as plenum, consciousness, and it is the almighty force, and that is what is defined as time. So it has these four qualities, and it is endless, infinite. So it has its own kinematic quivering, and it is everlasting and ever increasing. With all these qualities, it starts as a dust particle. It produces a dust particle, and because of the self-surrounding force, it starts spinning, and the association of those dust particles is called Akash, or the life force. And this life force is rotating in our body continuously, and that rotation is creating a spreading wave throughout our body, and that is called magnetic wave. And when this magnetic wave works through the sense organs, the touch, taste, smell, vision, and hearing, those four sense organs, through those four sense organs, if the magnetic wave is connecting to the external world, it starts feeling the obstruction, and that's what is transformed into perception. That's the perceptual discovery process of this biomagnetic wave form of consciousness. And that imprints in the same spinning motion. And as the spinning motion is constant, it has its own center point, and it got recorded in that center point of each and every life force, and even the center of all these rotational movements in the body. And this cycle is happening continuously because of the self-surrounding force and the need of that living being. And it has like six different reasons why, how it is getting induced. We'll go through them in the upcoming slides. So this is the process. So life force is rotating all over our body, and that rotations produce a spreading action of the same life force, and that's called magnetic wave. And that magnetic wave spreads to the external world through the sense organs, and because of the obstruction of those waves, it feels the perception. That's again recorded in the center of life force particles, and that is called imprints. And these imprints are induced continuously, and we are doing actions because of these imprints, and it is a continuous process. This is what we are doing on our day-to-day life, and we will discuss further in the upcoming slides. Okay, so we understand the mechanism of perception, imprints, and its circular activity. So here, if we take thoughts are induced, and it just operates in 4 dimensions. Those are time, distance, volume, and force. So without these 4 dimensions, the motions never happens. And even these 4 dimensions are defined based on motion. If there is a motion, and if it occupies a specific space, that is called volume. And if that force, or if that action prolongs or transform from one state to the another state, the time difference between the previous state and this state of motion is called, or the prolong of that particular motion is called time. And if there is a same kind of motion happens in parallel with this specific motion, the distance between these 2 motions are defined as distance. And the force at which this motion operates is called the force. So everything is defined based on motion, and that motion or movement is called thoughts. So thoughts are always operating in these 4 dimensions, and that starts sensing, and then thinking, and then thought. These are all the mind functions, and we need to understand these 4 dimensions, and these 4 dimensions are the keys for a thought to operate. So far, we understand what is thought, what is mind, and how this thoughts and minds are leading our life, and how it is recorded, and how it is induced, and how it is doing in a circular fashion to make ourselves live here. So this operations of thought and its quality and its nature and its actions are all combined to define the word life. So life is purely based on our thoughts and our mind, state of mind. So here we are going to discuss the different stages of our mind. We call it, in Sanskrit, we call it as the Pancha Koshas. And these Pancha Koshas are the different covers of our mind, or different ranges where it operates. So as mind is a magnetic wave, it has its own range. So that range is from 1 to 40 cycles per second, and that is called mental frequency. So the range at which the mind operates defines these koshas as well. So let's discuss these koshas in detail sometime. So the 5 koshas are Annamaya, Manomaya, Pranamaya, Vijnanamaya, Anandamaya. So Annamaya, so this kosha, so kosha means the state of mind or stages of mind. operates only on the material form of consciousness. So for example, if we take if we are thinking about food, body, like any materials, if our mind is acting on that particular boundary, that's called Annamaya. And most of us are, most of the time, we are in this kosha. And after we get into the practice of this introspection, meditation, and all, we'll get some intensity on our mind. And that helps us to think even a little deeper and then get ourselves to the different stages. Next is Manomaya. So Manomaya is the spiritual form. So it starts into the a little deeper understanding of, instead of the material form, it just goes into the a spiritual form, to a different range of mental frequency. And let's say Annamaya is a beta and Manomaya is the alpha and beta. And we are leading our life in a miserable way because of these mental frequencies, the range of mental frequencies, Annamaya and Manomaya. So on these ranges, we always think about pleasure and pain, because we are limiting the boundless phenomena called magnetism to a boundary. And we try to operate in that boundary that always creates a friction with the vastness of the Almighty. And that friction always exceeds the capacity at which our sensory organs or our physical structure operates. That's what is creating pain and pleasure. So most of us are always thinking about pain and pleasure because our range of mind is acting only on Annamaya and Manomaya. So Pranamaya is something like a little deeper, started to think about who we are and what we are, why we are here, and all that inner travel starts from Pranamaya. And prana is what the life force. So we start to think about what's the source of mind. And when that range of frequency starts, we go to the earlier stages of alpha, and we start to, the earlier range of alpha is called pranamaya. And when we start into this kosha, we will be in the pratyakara, where like we start disconnect ourselves, or understand. It's not actually disconnect, it's understanding that what is really feeling it. And we start into dive inward. That's called pranamaya, where we will be in the deeper or the earlier wave range of alpha. Vijnanamaya is, we really understand what's the source of mind and what is life force and how everything is operates, and what is the source of each and every material, and then the different natural actions. All these are happening through the life force, and life force is the key for everything. That is called Vijnanam. So Vin is Akash, Jnanam means knowledge. So we get a deeper understanding of what is really Akash and how all these cosmic existence, whether living, non-living, sensory, non-sensory, imperceptible things all over the universe is formed, and what is the base of all these. So when our mind operates in this range, it is a subtler state of our mind to understand and to be with the real source. This is called I would say dharana. So where we only have two and we always look at the source. And these are all the state where all the scientists and all the researchers, cosmologists are in, and based on these wave range. So they were mostly on theta, which is 4 to 7 cycles per second. So when our mind operates in this specific kosha or specific cover, then we call that as Vijnanamaya. Anandamaya kosha is the blissful state of mind, which goes even below 3, 2, 1 and no motion. And that's when we understand the real existence of the complete consciousness. That's called Anandamaya kosha. So our life is defined based on which kosha our mind is operating. And we understand and get clarity about each and every koshas. And this information will definitely help us to fine tune our thought process and mind to keep ourselves in a deeper state of mind, and that helps us to lead our life peacefully. So Annamaya, Manomaya, always dancing between pleasure and pain. Pranamaya is started a little deeper in the process of understanding peace. Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya is leading us to the peaceful state and then the blissful state of our mind. So these are the different stages of our mind, and I hope this gives us a little more understanding on the stages of our mind. Let us move on to the next slide. Okay, now we throughout the slides we discussed about life force, we discussed about biomagnetism, we discussed about the physical structure. So here our body consists of three different stages of our body. One is the physical form. We understand the physical form is the association of energy particle, and this physical form always has its own center. So if we bisect our body from top to bottom and then the cross sectionally, there will be a center point in our body. That is called the center of our body, and that's where our the sexual gland located, and that is the center of the sexual vital fluid. And astral body is the center of life force. As we discussed, throughout our body, our life force, which is a free moving Akash particle spinning all over the body, and as it is in a spinning motion, it naturally forms a center. If something is spinning, there will be a force or there will be a center to it. So that center portion is also the center of our body. So, and when this life force is spinning, whichever is spinning is always spreading. For example, if we take a big container filled with water to the brim of the container and it is in a standstill state. Let's say if we have a drop on this water-filled still container, then it starts forming a wave pattern which is in circular, and it starts naturally spread until the brim of the big container. And then after it reaches the brim, it starts to converge to the same point where it just get uh, induced by the drop of water. The same way, whatever is spinning is always spreading, and that spreading is called the biomagnetic spread, and it just spreads all over our body and then even beyond, based on our thinking, based on the intensity we create in the center. So that also has its own center, and that is also going to be the center of our body. So the center of our body, the center for the physical, and the astral is nothing but the life force body. Causal is the biomagnetic body. So all these three different bodies combined together form a physical body. We call it as physical body, but it has these three different things operating, and all three has the same center, which is the center of our body, and that center portion is called genetic center. So we get a new understanding about the new concept called genetic center. We discussed about life force, mind, thought, biomagnetism, and now we are going to understand a new concept called genetic center. And this genetic center is the center for sexual vital fluid, the center for the life force energy particle, and the center for biomagnetic circulation. Happens because of the spinning motion of life force. So together they form a vortex called the genetic center. That's what is shown in this picture. So let's discuss a little more about genetic center. So this genetic center is the center for three different layers of living being. One is physical body, astral body, and causal body, and it is the vortex for all three. And this is the place where it records everything. Whatever it perceives from the outside world through the sensual pleasure or sense organs, that's also recorded in the same center. And it is located at the center of our body, and that is called Mooladhara. And we call this as soul. So this is the seat of consciousness. And this seat of consciousness is called genetic center. And it starts expanding from this point. And this expansion goes to the brim of the universal existence and even beyond, and gets the same perceptions, how we expand ourselves. And this perception happens at the center of this soul. That's the seat of consciousness, and that is called genetic center. So that's about genetic center. So everything what we do is recorded as an imprint, and it is again expanding from this center point, and we do lead our life based on these records. And it's all happening in the genetic center. Let's think about imprints. So as we discussed, mind is nothing but the perceptual discovery process of consciousness, and that perceptual discovery process is having 10 stages. One is sensation, need, zeal, effort, result, enjoyment, experience. And then these 7 stages of our consciousness is called imprints of action. And these 7 stages is what is happening momentarily for each and every action. For example, if we take a scenario like we feel thirsty, so we need water, that's called sensation. We feel thirsty, that's called sensation. And then we need water, that's called need. Then zeal, we will try to find out where it is, that's called zeal. And then we'll apply our effort to find out where we can get the water. And as a result of this effort, we'll get water. So once we get the water, we drink. When we drink, we feel something, that's called enjoyment. And when we think about that, or the next moment after we enjoy the drinking of water, the next moment of, or thinking of the same enjoyment next moment is called experience. So these are the 7 stages of our mind, 7 stages of consciousness, which constitutes the word called mind. So these are all imprints of actions. By doing actions, we are creating some imprints. These are all the actions of limbs. Next is research, realization, and conclusion. So once we get the water, once we get the experience of like getting rid of the thirsty, and we research, oh, okay, so if we want water, we have to do the same again. And then this research leads to a realization, okay, so thirsty is coming because of lack of water in our system. So we need to get water whenever we feel thirsty. That's called realization. And then we decide that, so if we, for example, if we are thirsty, we are staying at home, then if we are going to the kitchen and get the water and drink, all these are happening in these 10 stages. And without realizing, it is a regular process of satisfying our sensation or need. So these 10 steps actually happens each and every action. These are the 10 stages of our consciousness and constitute a word called mind. And these are all the source of imprints. And these 3 stages, which is research, realization, and conclusion, is called imprints of wisdom. Consciousness working through brain cells to have some records. And these records are helpful when the same sensation or need happens again. So this is how the imprints are happening. This is the science behind how the imprints are happening. And these imprints directly go to the center of the living being. That center is nothing but genetic center. And it just expands from that point to these 10 perceptual discovery process. And that combined 10 steps is called mind. And this happens again and again, and it is recorded, and that's called imprints. And we understand 2 different stages of imprints. One is imprints of action, and another one is imprints of wisdom. So genetic center, mind, thoughts. Mind as well as thoughts are biomagnetic waves. We understood that. Mind is a result of thoughts. So bundle of thoughts is called mind. Sensory perceptions and thoughts are stored in the form of characterized knots in the genetic center. Yes, we discussed this complete process of recording in the center. They expand to reflex as thoughts and inner visions in the mind. Yes. So this is how our life is happening. And we understand the imperceptible phenomenons called mind, thought, life force, genetic center, and consciousness. So all these understanding of imperceptible knowledge about what is really happening behind our day in, day out activities will help us to gain more focus and gain more understanding. of how we can lead in a deeper state of understanding. And that leads us to go deeper in the stages of mind, that is koshas. And if we are in Vijnanamaya and Anandamaya, we can always keep our mind in a peace and blissful status. That's all we are trying to summarize here. So when the power of thoughts remain confined to the body, it is called naraham, nara akam. So nara means um, so we call naran as human. So nara akam means we always have um, a limited boundary thought process called Annamaya, then that is called Narakam. When the soul realizes itself as the I, is called Swaragam, Suvaragam. So we are trying to realize who we are, then that is where it is called Suvaragam. So we call Naraka Swarga. That's the real meaning of what is called Naraka and Swarga. So when our mind is in a limited boundary thought process of our physical body, that's called Naraka. And when we go deeper and understand what is the real source of this mind, the life force, and even the source of life force, that is when we realize what is real I, and that is called Swarga. People were led along the path of righteousness through stories about hell and heaven. So these Naraka Swarga are the two different concepts for people who have not think deeper. So they created these two phenomena called heaven and hell, and that helps the people to lead their life in a righteous way. So around this hell and heaven, they created a lot of stories to direct the people in the right path in their life. Mind is the soil from which life is sculptured. So yes, we understand that mind is the real phenomena which leads our life, or which sculpture our life to a defined or well sculpted image. All thoughts, words, and deeds take shape in the mind. So mind is always taking name and shape. So if we think about something, then we always name it, and then we create a visual image on our mind. Whether it is thought, word, or deed, anything, it always creates some shapes in our mind. That's how our mind operates, because mind records everything and it can visually see them and then imagine it and then visualize it. That's the important more advantages as well as disadvantages act of our mind. It is purely based on how we understand it and how we operates in that state. So that's what we are discussing here. All thoughts, words, and deeds take shapes in our mind. And mind is the soil of our life. And the mental transactions, whatever we do on our daily, day-to-day activity, is what defining our life. So next is temperaments arising in the narrow state of mind. So when we are in the limited boundary thought process, we are limiting the unbounded phenomenon called magnetism to a limited boundary, then we create all these 6 temperaments. Those are greed, anger, miserliness, immoral sexual passion, vanity, and vengeance. And when the noble thoughts in the expanded state of mind, so when we expand our boundary, that's when it starts changing to these 6 different more needed qualities of our mind, which is contentment. So the greed changed into contentment, The anger changed into tolerance. Miserliness changed into charity. Immoral sexual passion changes into chastity. Vanity changed into equality. Vengeance changed into forgiveness. So it all happens how we expand our mind. And that expansion is what operates, makes our mind operates in a very subtler uh, state of frequency, and that helps to um, change all these temperaments into six needed qualities of a human. So quality of thought is the quality of the man, and that defines his personality. And that's what we discussed throughout all these slides. I hope we get some understanding about the science behind all these imperceptible phenomena, and the importance of keeping the quality of thought will always help define the quality of man, and that quality of man is called his personality. So there is a poem by our Maharishi. எண்ணத்தை எண்ணத்தால் எண்ணி எண்ணி எண்ணத்தின் இருப்பிடமும் இயல்பும் கண்டு எண்ணத்தை எண்ணத்தில் நிலைக்கச் செய்தால் எண்ணமே பழக்கத்தால் தெளிந்து போகும். எண்ணம் அது எழும்போதே இது ஏன் என்று எண்ணத்தால் ஆராய்ந்தால் சுலபமாக எண்ணத்தின் காரணமும் விளைவும் காணும். எழும் எண்ணம் யாவும் நற்பயனாய் மாறும். As a gist of this poem, so we have discussed about thoughts and mind, genetic center, life force, consciousness, and all. All these are operating only through thoughts. If we think deeper, we can understand it's all operating only in the process called thoughts. So we are defining something to our psychic extension, which is called thoughts or mind, to itself. And we are trying to correct with the help of the same process called thought. So we are trying to redefine the same concepts what we understood in a little deeper way, and that knowledge will lead the same thought in a right direction, and that right direction naturally cleanse the same dirtiness what we have in the same process called thought. So we don't have anything else other than thoughts, mind. So we are using same mind as a director, same mind as an actor, same mind as an actions. Everything is the same thought. So if we take the tool called thinking, and that is happening all the time, but we are going to do it consciously by getting a proper direction, the psychic direction from our guru, and we are trying to attach these proper understanding to our actions and to our words and to our thinking process, and that leads to the path of righteousness. And all these are happening with the only one phenomenon called thought. So thoughts are the keys for our life, and that's what we are trying to define here. And we understood the cause and effect system of consciousness, and what we do is what we get, and the doing or getting is originated or seeded by the thought. So thoughts are the keys, and thoughts are the one which is driving. So that's the importance of that's the gist of this poem. Let's move on to the next one. So now we understand, we introduced a word called thinking, and that thinking in a deeper sense called analysis. So what is analysis? Thoughts sculpt human life. Yes, we understood. Noble thoughts comes in the way, stumbling and straying in life. Qualities of the mind depends on the quality of the thought. Evil thoughts have to be driven away. Practice of analysis of thought is meant to achieve this. So yes, so we understood that thoughts defines human, and thoughts and the quality of mind is purely based on quality of thought, and that's what is defining what is a man and his personality. We had to get rid of evil thoughts from our way of life. So to do that, there is a time or an effort needed to understand what is needed and what is not needed, right? So that process of understanding what is needed and what is not needed is called analysis. And that analysis has to happen in our thought, and it has to be a practice. And without we practice anything, we can't transform. So we can discuss about this analysis of thought for even for another 10 more sessions. But if we are not implementing it, or if we are not practicing it, there is no use. So practice is the key to identify what is good or bad, and eliminate what is bad. So elimination is a word of action, and that action has to be practiced. And that is what we are insisting on this analysis. So practice of analysis of thought is meant to achieve this. Yes. Let's see what is analysis of thought. Now, let's see what are all the reasons behind thoughts. So thoughts are raising based on need. Yes, we understood. And it happens based on habits. For example, we always drink a cup of coffee at 11 o'clock daily. Even though we don't have a need, when the time reaches at 11 o'clock, we naturally get a thought that, hey, this is tea time. Can we have a cup of tea or coffee? So that thought comes up. The same way, circumstances. For example, if you go to a beach where they will be making a lot of snacks, and all the people around you are purchasing them or trying to have some during the time, because of that circumstances, you will also be induced to have something. In the same way, if you are going into a spiritual discourse, if everybody is keenly watching or focusing on what the preacher is telling, then you will also naturally pulled into the thought process, and you will also sit and listen. So circumstance is also the reasons for thoughts. And imposition of others' thoughts. Most of the time, we are all driven by this. So we all will be imposed by others' thoughts, because the whole universe is filled with magnetism, and everybody is a resonating tower of magnetism where they throw some thoughts. For example, if you go to a market, there is a merchant who is selling mango, and he is thinking that everybody has to come to my shop and get some mangoes. If he is thinking very deeply, and that's been there in the surrounding as a thought process, and if you are leaning towards that, then you will be tend to get it. But if we think later, we will never have a thought of buying a mango when we reach home. So that's called imposition of others' thoughts. Hereditary. We are getting a lot of the qualities our ancestors, our mom and dad and our grandpa, grandma. So we are always having a bag or a record to start our life, and that's called heredity. And we naturally get that thought process induction within us. That's called hereditary. That's one of the reasons for thoughts. And divine thoughts are something which comes within us, and it is purely based on how we are qualifying ourselves to that state, and it just flows through you. For example, if we take our beloved Guru, Sri Yogiraj Vedatri Maharishi, and he got a thought which is world peace, and that thought is come through him because he make himself qualify for it. So those are the thoughts also get through us, or like that is one of the reasons. So the divine is also a reason to get the thought. So these are the 6 different reasons why we get thought: need, habits, circumstances, imposition of others' thoughts, heredity, and divine. So we understand these 6 reasons. Now, how to do analysis of thought? This is the practice part. So first we have to do Duriya meditation. After we perform Duriya meditation, we list out what are all the thoughts comes to our mind, and we figure out what are all the reasons. So we have to categorize those thoughts in these 6 different reasons behind the thoughts. And then each and every noble thought should be analyzed for possibility of success and implementation. Evil thoughts should be eradicated through suitable auto-suggestions. So we are doing 2 things once we list out the thoughts. One is identifying what is noble and what is evil. And noble thoughts needs some more intensity. So we have to do an analysis of what are all the possibilities to get it successful. And those needs to be analyzed and then recorded, because everything what we think is recorded in our genetic centers, and when the time comes it automatically resonates. And for the evil thoughts, no, we have to put an auto suggestion that this is not good and this is not good for me and others. So let's get this out of our way by doing an auto suggestion. So whenever this evil thought comes next time, this auto suggestion also entangled with that thought will also come, and this will slowly lead us to eradicate these thoughts in 1 or 2 attempts. So this is the practical tabular column we use for analysis of thoughts practice. So in the serial number, we list out all the thoughts, serial number and thoughts, and then we identify which category it belongs to. And then we do the analysis of noble and evil, and give intensity to the noble by doing analysis, and do auto suggestions to eradicate the evil. That's the practice we have to do. Before we do the practice, we have to keep our mind in a meditative state. So we do Duriya meditation, next list the thoughts, and figure out the reasons, whether it is needs, because of needs, habits, circumstances, imposition of others, heredity, divine, and outcome, whether it is noble or evil, and then conclusion. So we have to do definitive steps or actions to get it successful, or auto suggestions to eradicate. So this is the practical process. And the same poem, whatever we discussed in the previous slide, the same poem, if we think the same poem, now we understand the practical part of how to use the same thought as a director. So that the direction part is what is called the analysis of thoughts, and that's what we discussed here in these in the previous slides. In the same poem here, வாழ்க வளமுடன், வாழ்க வளமுடன், வாழ்க வளமுடன். Thank you so much, everyone, for this opportunity. Please raise your hands and ask if there is any doubts. குருவே துணை. வாழ்க வளமுடன்.
வாழ்க வளமுடன் ஐயா. Yeah, everybody can unmute yourself if you have a question and ask. Yeah, Introspection. Any questions? Anyone? Okay. So it was a wonderful session, Ayya.
Thank you, Ayya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's bless Karthikeyan Ayya. By the grace of the divine power, Karthikeyan Ayya and his family may enjoy good health, long life, enough wealth, prosperity, wisdom, and peace. வாழ்க வளமுடன். Be blessed by the divine
வாழ்க
power.
வளமுடன். நன்றிங்க ஐயா. வாழ்க வளமுடன்.
Now, I invite Gulshan Amma for our second session today, neutralization of anger. வாழ்க வளமுடன் அம்மா.
வாழ்க வளமுடன் பிரபு ஐயா.
Yes, Amma. Whenever you are ready, we can get started. Yes.
Right. I will just share the screen.
And let me stop the recording and restart it. Just.
Okay.